The New Orleans Saints are back in front of the media today, and wide receiver Chris Olave leads off our list of most important players to watch as the Saints get ready for their 2025 season. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to tell you the best move the New Orleans Saints made this offseason, which has nothing to do with player acquisition. We'll take a look over on the defensive side of the football in terms of players that we're wanting to watch at this next session of OTAs, leading off with Chase Young and his debut in front of the media in Brandon Staley's defense. We're going to kick everything off here with Chris Olave, who is going to build momentum towards what should be a standout season for the wideout, and it all begins here during OTAs. We appreciate you very much, as always, whether it's your first time or your next time, for being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Chris Olave is in line for a major step forward in 2025, as long as, of course, he can stay healthy. And we can agree that that's the case and then simply move on. Like, if he's not healthy, he's not available. If any player is not healthy and not available, they're not going to have a major impact for a season. But I want to talk about what Chris Olave has the potential to do, not what it is he has the potential to not do. So I'm going to focus on the positive side of this, because Chris Olave is the feature in this New Orleans Saints offense. We were discussing a little bit of this conversation earlier today in our squad show. Former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Lance Moore saying he's going to speak with Chris Olave before the season, and that a big part of it is going to be about self-preservation, right? Get down after you've gotten the yards, know when it's time to fight, know when it's time to not, all those other things. But what we can all agree on is that Chris Olave has immense talent. And I think there are three things in particular that I'm going to be looking for during OTAs, because we're going to get an opportunity to see some of the things that are foundational to the Saints' new offense. And I think that seeing some of these things be foundational could end up pushing Chris Olave's trajectory for 2025. That's why my eye is going to be on him during today's practice. So the first thing is his ability to separate, right? There's no contact in OTAs and everything, so there's not going to be any opportunity to see what he does with the ball in his hands for an extended amount of time, or how he fights through tackles or anything like that. I'm not too worried about that. I want to know what he does before the catch. His ability to create separation, his route running, all those other things. He looked really crisp and really fluid throughout last Thursday's practice. Want to see that continue here in this Thursday's practice. The second thing is his chemistry with the young quarterbacks, who are also on this list of players that we'll be watching. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, you know what it is. It's the quarterback battle of the century for the New Orleans Saints. Not really, not of the century, but it's the first quarterback battle that we've really seen here in New Orleans in quite some time. I never believed in the Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill battle. That was Jameis Winston's job from the very beginning. This battle has some elements of that to where it feels very much like it's Tyler Shough's job to lose, but Spencer Rattler made a very convincing start. Let's see if he can keep his convincing case. But I want to see Chris Olave's chemistry continue to grow with both of those guys. He received targets from both. Yes, Spencer Rattler took first team reps, but sometimes you mix in some of those first team wide receivers with the second team just to get that other quarterback reps with guys that play on the first team. There's not really a clean, this is the first team, this is the second team division all the time. A lot of those first team guys still rotate in, so you still get opportunities to build some chemistry with those young quarterbacks. So watching that process continue today will be another one on my list. And then finally, and this isn't as much about Chris Olave specifically, but it is about how he's utilized in this system. I want to see how some of the route concepts could potentially scheme up a guy like Chris Olave. His times at Ohio State, they did such a good job of that with him and Jackson Smith and Jigba, as well as Garrett Wilson, and finding ways to scheme those guys open. Like Justin Fields, as a quarterback, had a lot of wide open throws to these guys because the scheme opened them up. And so they were wide open in some of these situations. Can Kellen Moore get this New Orleans Saints offense back to its kind of Sean Payton days, in essence of being able to scheme receivers open, scheme pass catchers open. And so I'll be looking forward to seeing that too. So those are kind of the three factors. It's the Chris Olave factor, but it's also the chemistry with the quarterback factor and the usage in the system factor. So I'm going to be watching him closely today. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, like we talked about, definitely going to be watching them. Want to see, right? Like Spencer Rattler started off really strong. Does Tyler Shough close the gap at all? I don't think there's going to be a lot of separation created in terms of these two during OTAs. This isn't really the time where that happens, but we can only evaluate what we see. And so we will have takes based upon what it is that we see, but you won't hear me declaring a winner of the quarterback battle anytime soon, that's for sure. But I do think that like you want to see a little bit of these guys be competitive and go back and forth at one another and all these other things. And so be very interested to see kind of what the next week of progress looks like for these two in their battle. And then finally, one more player on offense that I really want to watch. And look, Alvin Kamara is going to make this list once Alvin Kamara is around. I assume that'll be during mandatory minicamp. So I don't want to leave the running backs out of this conversation, but I'm really going to be watching Juwan Johnson, the tight end, throughout this too. Like Foster Moreau's dealing with injury. Dallin Holker may or may not be on the field. We'll see. Taysom Hill's dealing with injury. Then you got a lot of young tight ends after that. So Juwan being kind of elevated into this leadership role in the tight end room, I just want to see him continue to develop, continue to find the way that it is that he's going to be utilized. Remember, he re-signed with the Saints after he had this sort of midnight hour phone call with, it wasn't an hour long, but it was during the midnight hour, like it was in that late evening hours, phone call with Kellen Moore about, why do you want me back? What are you going to do? How are you going to utilize me in this offense? Where do I fit? All those other pieces. And so if he's just out there kind of, repping blocks and doing some individual drills and stuff like that, that's one thing. But I want to see, like, what are some of the routes that he's asked to run? Do they have him crossing the field a la Dallas Goedert week 3 last year, right? Like you have an athletic former wide receiver in Juwan Johnson use that skill set. And so I'm really interested to see and pay more attention to how he is utilized, what routes he runs, what areas of the field they attack with him, all these other things. So my eyes a little bit more on the pass catchers this week. They were on the run game last week, but I'm really, really going to start to hone in on this passing game and kind of see how these weapons are being utilized. I'll give you a little bit of Lanyap already. A guy that I didn't plan on talking about, but that I will mention is Cedric Wilson Jr. too. Cedric Wilson Jr. was used a lot more than I thought, and we saw a lot more of him during that first practice. And so I'm curious to see if him being reunited with Kellen Moore is going to open the door for him to be a greater contributor. Last year when he signed with the Saints, we talked about how he would be able to contribute as a big slot guy, and we were kind of excited about that because the last note we saw that was his time with Kellen Moore in Dallas. Well, what better time for him to be able to replicate what it is that he did with Kellen Moore in Dallas than now with Kellen Moore in New Orleans. So I think he's going to be a part of that kind of pass catching group that I'll be watching as well. Devin Neal, Kendre Miller, some of the running backs absolutely in the equation. There's no doubt about it, but I'm keenly focused on the passing game this week. Coming up next, I want to take a look over the defensive side of the ball because Chase Young is expected to be present, and that is major news for New Orleans, who need to figure out how it is that he fits in their new defense. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs continue to roll along. We have one half of our finals matchup, the Oklahoma City Thunder, moving on to the NBA Finals. Will we find out who the other team is as soon as this evening as the Indiana Pacers look to move on with one more win over the New York Knicks, with the Knicks -4.5 tonight at home, trying to extend this series to see if they can make their bid for an NBA Finals appearance. You can check all of this out, whether you want to get in before tip-off or even live. Same game parlays, player props, money lines, live betting. You can find it all over at FanDuel.com today. And if you're a new customer, it's the perfect time to get involved over at FanDuel because you put your first $5 bet down and you can win $200 in bonus bets if that bet wins. The Knicks, 4-point favorites, may be a good place to go on the money line with that first $5. See if you can get that $200 in bonus bets. Go and check them out today. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, family. One of the most exciting things about the 6th day of OTAs, the second open in front of media, is that Chase Young will be present And I think Chase Young is one of the most important pieces to helping this New Orleans Saints defense turn itself around from last year. 31st finish in the run game last season for the New Orleans Saints across the league on the defensive side of the football. Sub 40 sacks again this season, something they used to routinely eclipse in 16 game seasons that they are struggling to even get to. With an extra game of the year, the Saints pass rush has not been successful. The Saints run defense has slowly deteriorated over the course of the past few years, but the system that has been bringing everything down in that case is no longer in place. Dennis Allen and his coaching staff out, Brandon Staley and his coaching staff in, things looking up for the New Orleans Saints defense. If nothing else, but from a less antiquated, more newness type of approach. And Chase Young is representative of exactly that series of changes. I'm so excited to see Chase Young in this defense. He was not present last week for the portion of OTAs that was open to the media, and we didn't see him in any photos or videos from that first week of OTAs. This past Tuesday, video comes out. Chase Young present, participating. Mario Davis present, participating. We'll talk about him here shortly. And the perception of Demario Davis, I think, is a really interesting conversation. So we'll have both of those here in a moment. But when it comes to Chase Young, he's kind of the guy, right? He's the newest, biggest investment on the defensive side of the football. Remember, the Saints went offense in their first and second rounds. No other big contracts given out outside of Justin Reed, but he's so far away from the line of scrimmage. The guy that you're looking at that's playing in a premium position that has had the most money invested in him, or the biggest investment of the offseason, is far and away the $51 million 3-year deal that's worth up to $57 million in Chase Young. And so him being able to come in and play that stand-up edge rusher role, which plays a little bit more to his strengths as an athletic, speed, big-time pressure player, that plays to his strength to have him up. That plays to the strength to let him win with speed and win with his athleticism, as opposed to constantly having to be sort of like a bull rush transition speed to power thing. Can he do that? Yeah, sure. But this also gives him an opportunity to have his entire tool set available to him, which I think is a good thing for Chase Young. And if that is true, would be a good thing for the New Orleans Saints as a whole. Chase Young, one of the top 10 players in the NFL last year when it came to pressure on opposing quarterbacks, but only finished with 5.5 sacks. Not all pressures are created equal. Some of them are hurries. Some of them are hits where you make contact with the quarterback, but he's gotten the ball out of his hands. Other times, you make him rehuddle. And I think that's what you want to see more of. You want to see more of offenses having to take a loss, rehuddle, and try to recoup from behind schedule. Saints opposing offenses did not get behind schedule a lot. And a sack is a great way to get them to doing that, as well as pressure as a whole. It all has value, don't get me wrong, but they're not all created equal. And so getting the opportunity here to finally be able to put eyes on, we believe, we hope, Chase Young in this defense, I think is going to be just a good bit of information to get, especially with him being so representative of what's new about this New Orleans Saints defense. Remember, this is a former number 2 overall pick. This is a guy that is expected to be one of the most premier pass rushers in the NFL. He hasn't fully been able to live up to that, mostly because of health. He got that neck procedure done, before the season last year, and then played all 17 games. And so if he's better this year coming off of that procedure than he was last year, then I think that that's a good sign for New Orleans, and that makes that investment worth it. But I think the production on the field has to be able to do that. And much like Chris, has to be able to prove that. And much like Chris Olave, to where the scheme and the system can support him, you want to see that from the Chase Young perspective too. Can the scheme and the system support what it is that Chase Young does very well? The next player I want to keep an eye out on is somebody I feel like I haven't talked about as much as I nearly should. And honestly, somebody that not a lot of people have talked about, period, that I think we should be talking more about. And that's second-year cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, Alontae Taylor is this really fun sort of enigma of the defense because you can ask him to do anything and he's going to find a way to be impactful. That's awesome. But that flashiness, not flashiness because he's more consistent than that, but the shininess of his game is something that draws your eye to it a lot. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a technician at his position and is now being thrust into a major starting role. Now, he started the last 8 games of the season last year. Over the course of the last 3 games of the season, he was targeted 17 times, allowed just 5 receptions over the course of that time. 17 targets, 5 receptions. That is a 29.4% completion percentage. 29.4%. That is outstanding composure for a rookie that's getting thrown into a brand new situation. And remember, he wasn't thrown into that situation because, it was part of the plan. He was thrown in that situation because Paulson Adebo broke a fibula and then Marshawn Lattimore got traded away, right? So it's very different when you're thrust into that situation in that kind of situation, or in that kind of circumstances, right? Dealing with those kinds of circumstances. So I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, as a technically sound, fundamentally strong corner, stepping into a major feature role on defense, deserves at least some more conversation and certainly deserves eyes during practice. So I'll be watching him as well. And then finally, over on the defensive side, not finally, but finally for the purposes of today's conversation, there are several other players that are worth keeping an eye out on throughout this process. But one of the big guys that I'm really intrigued by right now is Demario Davis, right? Demario Davis gets to walk in and be the established player. And Demario Davis doesn't get a lot of attention outside of New Orleans, and that's because there's no question marks about Demario Davis, right? Like, national media likes guys that there are question marks around. Can they be this? Can they be that? Will they be this? Will they be that? Will they show up? Will they not show up? Those are not questions that you ask about Demario Davis. Yes, he can be that, whatever that is. Yes, he will show up. Like, he will. The answer is yes when it comes to Demario Davis at all times. And so nationally, he doesn't get a lot of attention because of that, because that's not what sells nationally. But here locally, I think we get a really good understanding of what it is that Demario Davis has continuously contributed to this defense, and that is that he has consistently made this defense the best defense that it can be with him in the lineup. And so I'm really interested to see now with this new defensive system where he fits. I mean, we know where he fits in. He's the middle linebacker. He's he's an inside linebacker. He's the quarterback on the field and all those other things. I'm just excited to see him because I feel like when he's on the field, then you see what this defense really is. And so I think that'll give us our first glimpse of the Demario Davis fully realized, or as fully realized as you can during OTAs, version of the defense. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints' best off-season move this offseason had everything to do with a departure and not an acquisition, but it's not as simple as it sounds. We got that coming up for you next. We continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The best move the New Orleans Saints made this offseason was getting $30 million back from Derek Carr. It's not an acquisition. It's not an addition. It's not a trade. It's not a player that got cut. It's not Derek Carr retiring, although I think that actually ended up being the best possible scenario for both sides of this equation. It's not the new coaching staff or new coaching hires. It's the money. Follow the money. It's all about the money. Money talks, right? To me, getting $30 million back from the Derek Carr contract is massive for the New Orleans Saints. Now, they're not going to get all that money back the moment that the retirement processes, which is going to be in just a couple of days, June 2nd. Or we expect it to be June 2nd. It'll be after June 1st. So they're not going to get a whole rush of $30 million back, but that's okay. What's going to happen is that his dead cap for next year is going to get reduced by $20+ million. The Saints will get their $1.255 million base salary back for this season. But the big impact is going to be on 2026's salary, where the dead cap drops about $28 million, which then takes the New Orleans Saints from being $53 million over the salary cap to just over $20 million over the salary cap. It's going to reduce by over half, or just about half. And that's a major win for the New Orleans Saints, who now are one step closer to financial freedom, who now are one step closer to not having to be 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, $111 million over the salary cap each time that a season is about to begin. The Saints are finally about to get to a point to where they're redoing their contracts and they're making money so that they can go and sign players that will be impactful for them, as opposed to just simply trying to be compliant with the NFL salary cap. And a big reason why is because they're getting that $30 million back from Derek Carr. And I have had a lot of people tell me, well, this just shows you how nice Derek Carr is and all those other things. And I will say Derek Carr is very nice. I got the opportunity to work with him over the course of 2 years. Nice guy. No one's $30 million nice. Not a now, nutta. Not a now, nutta. $30 million nice. Nobody. And so when I look at all this and I look at the Saints getting $30 million back, it tells me that there's more to the story, but that the Saints and Derek Carr found an amicable way to the end of that story. We might never hear what the full details are. Maybe there was the potential of this getting litigious in some way. It did not. And I believe that the $30 million to the Saints and the $10 million that Derek Carr still got to walk away with is a big reason why it did not reach that point. Therefore, it kept it amicable, good for everybody. Everybody maintains a good perception. Everybody maintains a good face. Everything's good. Part ways, move on. The other reasons why I think that getting that $30 million back is the best thing that happened to the New Orleans Saints this offseason, or the best move the New Orleans Saints made this offseason, is because it gives them the material that they need to be able to lay the building blocks for their new vision for this team. For the first time in a long time, the New Orleans Saints are building something new. They're never going to say that they're rebuilding. They're never going to say that they're taking a step back so they can later take a step forward. They're never going to openly say those things. But I think that they would be willing to say that they are building something new, and they're building something that's worth being excited about for the first time in a little while, right? It never felt like this team was going to go anywhere under Dennis Allen. It never felt like this team was going to go anywhere still trying to cling to the past success of Sean Payton when you didn't have any of the necessary pieces to be able to retain or recreate the success of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Now, everything is new. Everything is heading towards a different situation. The Saints didn't have as much turnover on their roster this offseason as I thought that they would. But I think what that tells you is that they focus on the coaching staff. And then now they're going to be looking forward to being able to revamp the roster. And a big reason why they're going to be able to do that is because of this money, is because of this $30 million. It doesn't tell the entire story. It's not the only thing, right? Like the Saints I have about $16 million of effective salary cap space left. That means salary cap space that takes into consideration not only the top 51, but also signings of the rookie class. Okay. So if they carry the majority of that into 2025 and leave 2025 with $8 to $10 million to roll over to next year, that chips away. If the salary cap is higher than what is expected to be the salary cap next year, that chips away. They get so much more opportunity to go out there and actually utilize their funds to build something new. Now, the key will be making the right decisions with that money. And that's something that Mickey Loomis and the New Orleans Saints front office, Kellen Moore is going to have to make the right decisions there. That is a Brandon Staley's got to be like there's so many pieces to that. But from the front office down, and that includes everybody, they're going to have to make the right decisions with how to spend that money, what talent to go and get, and then what to do with that talent once they end up in the building. And so the Saints are about to be in that place. And that's a good spot to be. ESPN ranked the New Orleans Saints dead last in the NFL in FPI. FPI, Football Power Index. Basically, for preseason FPI, they pulled together things from Vegas. Win totals, lines for individual games, all these other things. And then they create sort of this composite score that's based on a 0.0 average. So they figure out kind of what like expected points added might look like, all these other things, offense, defense, special teams, put all that together, come up with an average in terms of what a team is. And then so you're either better than average or below average, or you're average, whatever it might be. And the Saints are a negative 5.2. For perspective, and I love the way that Dylan Sanders, our host over at the Squad Show this morning, put this, for a comparison, the Philadelphia Eagles are plus 5.5. And so people are expecting the New Orleans Saints to be as bad or as below average as the Philadelphia Eagles are expected to be as good or above average. And so that is the perception that this team is walking in with. If they can change that perception, it's going to be very easy for them to spend money in the coming years because they're going to be looked at as a destination, for players that are looking to revive the reputation of a highly respected franchise across the league, right? You look at that 2006 to 2020, 2021 span, this was one of the most winningest teams in the NFL, right? During that span, Mickey Loomis, one of the most winningest general managers, if not the winningest general manager during that time, right? And so that is something that this team, this organization would like to reclaim. So the two things that are going to help them do that, well, the three things that are going to help them do that are attracting the talent, making themselves desirable from a competitive standpoint, and being competitive on the financial market. Those are three things. And so all of that work begins this season. But one of the most important things that will fast track their success from the financial side already happened or is about to happen, whatever. And that is the New Orleans Saints getting $30 million back from Derek Carr. One of the most successful offseason moves I've seen across the league, if I'm being completely honest, from a financial standpoint. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, everything that you need to know from OTAs, the standouts, the big stories, what's going on the offensive line, where's Trevor Penning? We'll take a look at the quarterbacks, all that in tomorrow's show. We appreciate you very much for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know what the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.